Hello, everyone, and welcome to Earp Sister Feels, episode number 7. My name is Kevin Batchelder, and on this particular episode, I'm going to be discussing the Wynonna Earp Season 1 finale, I Walk the Line. That's Season 1, Episode 13. Appreciate you all checking out these videos, and welcome back for those of you who've been along for the ride so far. I have a lot of fun doing these videos, recording them myself with my thoughts on the Earp Sister scenes in each episode. And then the great community aspect of it is you all get to leave some comments that I include in the final video that gets posted on YouTube. So while this is open for a couple of days, you'll see that there's a button down below marked Record or Reply. You don't need any special apps or anything. You can just tap on that button, record some thoughts, be it brief or a little more involved if you'd like. Play it back, make sure you like it, and then send it to me from there. Nice and easy to do, and I love to get those thoughts. So please don't hesitate to pop them in and let me know. It really makes for such a fun community aspect to these episodes as I do them during our Wynonna Earp hiatus here. So any of you that have been along for the ride, as we say, for a while, who follow me on social media or the podcast, you know how important this episode and one specific scene in it is. So I am warning you now, this will probably be a bit of a lengthy one and maybe an emotional one. And this is definitely not the first time I've tried to record this one, which will not surprise any of you that know me. But, all right, let's get in. Let's talk about the content of the episode as far as Earp Sister scenes. We have the scene early on. We don't have Wynonna in Waverly, but when Wynonna goes back to the homestead after what's all happened there at the Wainwright and all, Willa comes in, and Wynonna is trying to, kind of get things figured out and figure out where Waverly might be. And I love the fact that as, they're kind of getting things together and running around, it's Wynonna that has to tell Willa, when Willa's trying to talk about getting Peacemaker back and everything else, that Peacemaker is just a gun. Waverly is Waverly. And this is much like what happened in the scene back in the previous episode when Waverly got shot and Willa wanted to run off after, one of the assailants and all. So I just think these are just so nicely done, especially when you go back and do the rewatches and you see this in terms of understanding where Willa was and all that happened there. I just think it's so important and it's so telling, for their relationships and all. So definitely had to highlight that one, even if Waverly isn't in that particular scene. The next opportunity we do get for Wynonna and Waverly and Willa together is the big one at the police station. The whole one when they go back there, Chrissy Nedley had tied up, or I shouldn't say tied up, she duct taped up Waverly, and they're all there, and everything plays out, with Waverly having gotten her hands on Peacemaker, telling Wynonna she doesn't trust Willa, and everything comes to light here. And this is such an important scene on so many levels for so many of the characters. Certainly the Earp sisters, that's why we're here talking about it, but as everybody knows from watching the show, this scene lasts just over 4 minutes. And in here we get Waverly knowing that Willa has gone bad, Willa turning on Wynonna and Waverly, Wynonna finding out that Nicole is Waverly's girlfriend, Waverly saying that she loves Nicole, Wynonna actually giving up Peacemaker to protect Waverly, Nicole getting shot, obviously, and then Waverly and Nicole having to go off together, try to get Willa and figure everything out. This is just the dialogue here, the way Emily wrote it. It is just so wonderful. That 4 minutes just tells so much about our entire show, and obviously the Earp sister relationship. To know that Wynonna is going to be willing to give up Peacemaker just to protect Waverly there. That is such a big scene. It's so good. We then move forward a lot with the plot. We have the scene where in the alleyway, all the local townspeople all needing to try to get Wynonna so they can get the anecdote from Bobo. And this is our big time for Nedley. And I have to highlight it, even if it's not an Earp sister scene, because it's when Nedley becomes, as I say, our Nedley. When he gives the speech and talks about, the fact that Wynonna is going to be the one that can save them and what's going to go on there. So that was an important one. And it leads into what what my notes simply say as the scene. As they're walking down the street, Waverly tells Wynonna that she needs, to be the one to go find Doc and Dolls, and that Waverly has something she has to do on her own. And they share just a moment, realizing that they have to go their separate ways, and, it's so dangerous, who knows what's going to happen. And Wynonna just gives her the kiss on the forehead, and they just separate there with no other dialogue. You know, back when we did the podcast covering this episode shortly after it came out, I mentioned, that was our episode number 21, and I mentioned how touching that scene was for me and how much it summed up the whole season and the whole show to that point. Because again, their Earp sister relationship and just how much the show had come to mean to me and so many other people. And I just thought it was just such a perfect summation of that. And that's why I loved it so much. And then about a week after we released that podcast, we had the opportunity to talk to Emily Andrus, the showrunner, and do technically we listed it as an interview, but if you've listened to it, you know it's more a conversation, because that's just how awesome Emily is. She ended up asking Bonnie and I as many questions as we were going to ask her. And it was wonderful. But one of the topics I brought up to Emily during the conversation was, being a first season and kind of finding your footing with a show. What were some of the things that surprised you, that you had to kind of shift and change, or that, you didn't know coming in? And she talked about many different things, but one of the things she mentioned, it's actually at the 1450 mark, if you want to go back and pull it up in that podcast. It's our episode number 22, early July 2016. She said, and I'm quoting here, "I always knew that the true romance of the series was the Earp sisters. I was surprised with how much chemistry Dom and Mel had both in real life and on the screen." We kind of take it for granted now as longtime fans, but as a showrunner, you have no idea sometimes how actors are going to gel, and it was great to hear her say that, and how much it means. And at another point too, she was asking us a little bit. Excuse me, in talking about the show, she asked us if we thought, Bonnie and I, the show had changed from the time we first started watching it. As the show comes together, she as the showrunner was very curious. Did we think it had changed or shifted in any way? And a couple of different things we talked about, and I was so glad because I got a chance to bring up to her how much of a huge Buffy the Vampire Slayer fan I was. And this is before I found out how much she was and how much she used that as a foundation for the series. But I mentioned to her that Earp Sisters scene on the street there in the finale really, to me, bookended the series very much with the whole the opening of the show, with the relationship between them, but also was very much giving me Buffy vibes, because, Buffy is about the characters. It's about the relationships. The monsters, the plots, they're only enough to keep the character relationships going, at least in my mind and for many of us. So I mentioned how much that really meant to me and kind of why I had fallen in love with the show so hard. And another quote from her at the 3250 mark of that podcast, she said, quote, "That scene was actually written with a bunch more dialogue. And then on the day, I was like, they almost don't need to say that much to each other. They just know each other so well," end quote. And that's exactly it. So that beautiful scene that meant so much, because there was no dialogue, they realized that they didn't need it. Because of what it meant to the characters and what came across on screen. And it was just, and it still does, as you can tell. It means so much to me. I'm sitting here wearing my Earp Sister shirt that Clone Nick gave me back at a New England Earper meetup back in 2017. One of my most prized, Earp possessions. Because it's that scene and how much it meant to me. And it was such a great gift to get that. And those of you that have been longtime listeners to the podcast know too that Bonnie, Bridget, and I were very blessed to get to do a set visit in season 2, early in season 2, and along with visiting the actual shooting sets and the internal sets and Homestead and all that great stuff there, and actually seeing them shoot at Nicole's house there for episode 210. We also got to go. Allison from IDW took us to some of the external shooting locations, we're outside of Shorty's in the street, outside the police station and stuff. And we realized that I was very interested in trying to find where that scene, the forehead kiss scene, was filmed. And trying to find it was a little bit of a challenge. Bonnie did a great job looking up on the internet some, Wynonna Earp shooting locations. We got some cross street names. We were just kind of walking around in that town there in Calgary to try to find it. And then we came across it. It literally was right around a corner. It just kind of unexpectedly, we walked around a corner and boom, there it was, the brick wall. And we realized from seeing the angles and all that that's where it was. And to get a chance to actually see that in person, to just put my hand on that wall and realize that's where it was filmed, and that just summarized so much for me, the entire Earp experience, everything with the Earpers, with the show. I mean, when we did that interview with Emily, we didn't know if the show was going to get renewed. It could have been a one and done, folks. This could have been just a jewel of a first season and nothing more. So the emotion of all of that, and having the show get renewed, and the experience of this wonderful cast and all of you, and the wonderful experience I got to have, and the fact that I can be myself and wear my emotions on my sleeve, and the way all of you have embraced me. I mean, I'm a 50-something a grandfather, and I'm head over heels in love with this show and with all of the Earpers and all of you, and it just means so much. And getting to actually see that location was so moving. It meant so much to me. It's just everything wrapped up in the show, and I get emotional. That's just the way I am. It means so much to me and all of this. And that's why I go back and do all these things, the podcast, all the stuff Bonnie and I love to do. It's a ton of fun. It's a lot of time, but we love doing it. And getting a chance to do this, rewatch, and focus on the Earp sisters is just some beautiful stuff. So, I'm sure for many folks that scene is nice, but it's a little more than a little blip on the whole journey of Wynonna Earp, because we have so much more powerful stuff still to come, Earp sister and otherwise. But for me, I just can't help but realize how much that crystallized everything that is good about this show, and the Earpers and the cast and IDW and everybody behind it. So thank you for indulging my emotional roller coaster there. But it's still such an important scene as they break to go in their different directions. And take care of things, as we see. They each are able to do what needs to be done. Along with Doc and Dolls taking care of everything. I mean, we have everything lead up to the powerful stuff that occurs with Wynonna having to kill Willa and also shoot Bobo and all that goes there. And we do get one last, Earp sister scene with Doc as we're out there, where everything went down, talking about the fact they're going to have to go after Dolls and all. And Waverly touches the goo. We all know she shouldn't have, but Waverly touches the goo. And how prophetic was it at that point when we saw her as viewers touch it, and the eyes go black and all that, and we hear Wynonna telling her that Waverly asks her to Wynonna if she's ready, and she says ready for anything, just as Waverly turns around and shoots in her direction. How was that for a way to end a season? I mean, Emily has done such an amazing job with the cliffhangers at the end of each season, but again, we got that. We had no idea if that's all we were going to get since we were so ratings challenged and all, but so great that we got a chance to see where it's going to go and leading to season 2 and season 3. So obviously big stuff. I've been looking forward to doing this video and, being nervous about it. Like I said, this was definitely not the first time I've recorded this one. But I think this one I held up pretty good on. And no matter how many times I redo it, I'm still going to get emotional for how much this means. So appreciate you all listening, and also the folks leaving comments both on Twitter, Facebook, and also loving the videos that we include as well. This is a total blast, and I love doing it, and I love getting the thoughts from each and every one of you. So please do keep them coming, and I hope you all take care, and you have a great day.
Hi, Kevin. I'm so glad that you're talking about this episode. It's one of my favorite episodes of all time, of all TV, not just Wynonna Earp. In particular, the scene that you're talking about the most, the Earp sisters' forehead kiss. So I love that it still makes you emotional after all these years. And I love that I was there in Calgary when we finally found the spot. I remember almost giving up because we couldn't really locate it. And then kind of piecing it together from pictures and finally getting to be there with you when you were there. And that moment was really special. I love this scene for a lot of reasons, but one of the things I love the most is it kind of is a throwback to episode 1, where in episode 1, we see them share a really awkward hug in the street, and they don't have, okay, honey, hold on. They don't have a really great relationship at that moment, so it's this really awkward and stiff hug, and by the end of the episode, by the end of finale, all they need is just that one forehead kiss and they know exactly where they stand with each other. Their relationship has grown so much, and I think that really meant a lot to me to see that relationship progress, and I love how that was just a very simple gesture, yet it meant so much. And if you look back, and as they're both in the street, they're both sharing a moment, and how far they've come from the first episode to the last of the first season. Like you, this fandom means so much to me. I'm allowed to be me in this fandom as well, and I'm glad that you're allowed to be you. You want to say hi?
Hi.
Say, I love Wynonna Earp.
I love Wynonna Earp.
So I'm really glad. I'm really glad that this episode, that we're talking about this episode again, because it is such a great episode. And like I said before, it's my favorite episode of all time. So,
Bye.
Hey everyone, just wanted to chime in real quick about Season 1, Episode 13 and the Earp Sisters. What I really love about this episode, granted, it's full of Earp Sister moments, but my favorite is two moments that kind of connect. So the first one is at the very beginning of the episode, where Wynonna says to Willa, Peacemaker is just a gun, Waverly is Waverly. And I think that is a huge testament to how much Waverly and Wynonna's relationship has grown over the season. Peacemaker is the thing that's going to stop the Revenant. It's the only thing that works. So for Wynonna to be willing to just give that up for Waverly is huge. It's a testament to their bond and how strong it's become. And so later in the episode, when Waverly is pleading with Wynonna to save Nicole by giving the gun to Willa, again, it's a testament to how much their relationship has really grown. And so it's this beautiful moment that is really, really shown by Dom and Melanie's acting. You get this, just their eyes alone in the scene, staring back and forth to each other, pleading, Waverly's pleading, do it, just give her the gun, save Nicole, and then you have Wynonna who's like, please don't ask me to do this, because if you ask me to do this, I'll do it. And so I think this is beautifully played, and really just strikes you in the heart when you watch it, because there's that final, fine, I'll give it to you kind of thing from Wynonna, and it's like this damn burst of fine, I can't just, Waverly's asking me to do this, I have to do it. And I love that moment so much. And it's just kind of sort of gives you almost like a full circle of where the relationship started in the season to where it ended. In the beginning of the season, Wynonna is just trying to find Peacemaker, gets the gun, and Revenants are a thing, and Waverly's also there, and, their relationship's kind of rocky at the start, but now it's kind of come full circle in which she's willing to give up the gun for Waverly, and I just love that so much. So, anyways, that's my thoughts on the finale of Season 1. Obviously, I also love the scene with the forehead kiss that Kevin loves a lot. That scene gets me every time as well. So, it's been a fantastic season 1 of just sort of navigating their relationship, and it has strong moments. They've had, moments that maybe aren't as strong, but it's just their relationship kind of at the end there just sort of comes together in a way that I love. So anyways, that's my thoughts.
Okay, so the Season 1 finale. I feel like there's quite a few moments in here that I really love. One thing that sticks out to me, though, is when Wynonna does say, Peacemaker is just a gun, Waverly is Waverly. I feel like this is one of two times within this episode alone that Wynonna's just really proving that Waverly's the most important thing to her and always will be, and that relationship is so important to her, because this is something that's pretty prominent throughout the entire series, that Wynonna is willing to sacrifice anything except for her sister, that's basically where she draws the line, and it just shows how much her sister really means to her and what she's willing to give up to keep her safe. And then, like Kevin, the forehead kiss is a scene throughout the entire series that is so special to me. And I feel like a forehead kiss in general is such a gesture or a sign of affection that has nothing to do with it being sexual or anything like that, but it's just very, it's to comfort another person and to, show that you care about them. And a lot of times, a forehead kiss, like when I think about it, it initially reminds me of like a mother to a child. And I think that that is somewhat a great example of like why it's so important to me, because I feel like with Wynonna and Waverly, Wynonna is her big sister, yes, but their mom also left when they were both very young, but especially Waverly. And I feel like Wynonna kind of took on not necessarily that role, but feels like that she needs to protect her and comfort her just as much, not as much as just a big sister, but also as a parent, because her mother wasn't there for Waverly growing up. And this is something that reminds me a lot of mine and my little sister's relationship, and how I kind of stepped up and felt like I was more of a motherly figure to her as well. So I think that that's why it definitely hits home. But I do think that moment is just like the perfect moment, that Wynonna literally doesn't need to say anything. That forehead kiss says it all. Like, she's telling her like that she loves her, she's comforting her, and like letting her know that everything's gonna be okay, and that she's gonna be there, and they're gonna figure it out. And I just think it's so beautiful and so meaningful. And I actually even last year at ACON, I got this picture done with Mel, which is like my favorite photo ever of life. But I think I cried after taking it, because that scene is just so special to me and will always stick out as one of the most important Earp Sister moments.
Hi guys, so Earp Sister Feels, season 1 finale. We start off with Waverly risking her safety to take Peacemaker from Willa and get it back to Wynonna. And I saw Waverly secretly taking the gun as a way to show that even though she couldn't exactly articulate what it was about Willa that didn't sit right with her, her instinct was to look out for Wynonna. She didn't know how much she trusted Wynonna until something came along to stress that relationship. And Waverly is so used to relying on her intellect and her knowledge to find her place in the world and to root herself into her existence as an Earp. But now she's finally getting more opportunities to just trust her instinct and go with her gut. And we saw it starting with Nicole, where instead of talking herself into or out of a relationship, she just goes for it. And now with Willa and Wynonna, she doesn't have any hard proof or evidence that Willa is going to betray them. But like Bobo said, Waverly is intuitive. And so Waverly puts her faith and her trust in that bond that she and Wynonna have. And she trusts her intuition, and it tells her to put Wynonna first. Then we see in a beautiful parallel Wynonna doing the same thing. When Willa is trying to convince Wynonna that dealing with the townspeople and Bobo's threat and finding Peacemaker, the literal thing that can protect everyone from the Revenants, that is the priority. Wynonna is not having any of that. And she makes it clear with the quote, "Peacemaker is just a gun, Waverly is Waverly." So Wynonna here is trusting her intuition that finding Waverly first is the most important thing, and that, they will figure out everything else after that. So here Wynonna is also putting her sister first. And we see it again when Wynonna literally gives up their best chance at, stopping Willa and Bobo when she hands over Peacemaker to Willa, because Waverly essentially asks her to save someone that she loves. And so again, in this moment, Waverly's well-being comes first. Consequences be damned. And Wynonna has faith that they will figure out the aftermath later together, the two of them. It's just when Wynonna gives Waverly that wink after, she and Nicole have that moment after Nicole gets shot, it's just kind of nice to see Wynonna giving her sister a signal that, she loves her, she supports her, and she has her back always. And then the next Earp Sister Feels scene that we have is the forehead kiss scene, where everything that's been building and adding to their relationship in this episode and throughout the series really so far comes together in the scene, and it's finally solidified their bond as a stable, unspoken, unified, and powerful connection between these two sisters. Waverly tells Wynonna that there's something only she can do, meaning that they're going to have to go their separate ways. And in this moment, she doesn't ask for permission or approval from Wynonna, which she had been doing in the past, as they're rebuilding their relationship. She's kind of looking up to her big sister, wanting her approval. But in this moment, she doesn't do that. She just kind of stands in her power as an autonomous woman. And some part of her trusts that she won't have to convince Wynonna, and that Wynonna will just trust in her. And Wynonna, even though her gut is telling her that she needs to protect her baby sister, her heart is telling her to just trust Waverly to get things done on her own and to let her go for now. And you can see that conflict in Wynonna's face and in her eyes, to the point where she doesn't even have any words, especially after they just had their lives threatened and Waverly's safety was just threatened previously with the mob scene. But in that moment, Wynonna listens to her heart. She trusts her sister. She puts what Waverly needs first. And she just looks into her eyes, kisses her on the forehead, and she just lets her go. And everything that is unspoken between them about the strength of their bond is right there in that brief but incredibly meaningful and beautiful moment that they have together. And this is in stark contrast to Wynonna and Willa's moment where they have the standoff, when everything that Wynonna was hoping to rebuild with their connection, with her own big sister, comes crashing down in that standoff, and Willa pulls the trigger of Peacemaker, essentially attempting to kill her own sister. And you can see the deep hurt in Wynonna's eyes when she realizes this, and her heart just breaks at her sister's betrayal. And then it breaks again when she's forced to actually use Peacemaker on Willa and kill her own sister. So, some Earp sister bonds get shattered in this episode, while the main one, Waverly and Wynonna, comes out on top, stronger than ever. And, it's just great to see Wynonna, again, at the end, being surrounded by people she loves and cares about with Doc and Waverly. So it was just a fantastic episode all around. All right, bye.
All right, season finale time. It is here. Man, there are so many things to say about this episode. To keep it brief, I'm going to go with the 5-minute chunk of scene at the police station. There's just so much to take apart here. First of all, and I'm sure that I'm not going to be the only one to mention this, for the second time and only time, well, the second and last time in this season, we hear Wynonna call Waverly baby girl, and it happens at a very, very, very important time because Waverly has sort of exposed what she's known as truth for a long time, that Willa isn't exactly the Willa that they lost. And Waverly slides Peacemaker underneath the table, and at that moment, Wynonna, who's been sort of distant and sort of been, forcing Waverly to trust Willa, so many W's, you Earps, has been sort of forcing Waverly to trust Willa. She is clear in that moment. Waverly doesn't have to say anything, which is the first time. There's going to be 3 of these Waverly doesn't have to say anything moments. But this is the first time Waverly doesn't have to say anything about Willa, and with the baby girl, that Wynonna trusts her, implicitly, and knows that, and she's open to understanding again, because before she kind of had the blinders on, because, Willa's back. So the blinders are off. She's taking in new information. She's at a new understanding, and that's huge. Then we have the scene, they come out. Waverly does have an adorable little sister moment where, Willa accuses her of drinking the champagne, and she's like, did not! And it's, the most little sister thing ever, and I love that moment with such, tense things going on. It's amazing. So then we have the moment, and, as a queer woman, a huge moment, where, Wynonna finds out that Waverly has lied to her, has been hiding this big this pretty big thing from her. And Willa exposes Waverly and Nicole's relationship, and Wynonna has like 4 seconds to take it in before Willa is pointing a gun at Nicole, and everything is in the balance. And Waverly, sweet abandonment issues Waverly, tells Wynonna that she loves Nicole, which is a huge can of worms that I'm not even going to touch. But Wynonna chooses in that moment to accept it as the big deal that it is, knowing her sister, and gives Peacemaker to Willa. And then finally, the scene in the alleyway where they have the moment and there's the kiss on the forehead. And as a big sister, there's a moment where you realize that your little sibling, dang it, I'm getting emotional. I've had a very emotional weekend, where you realize that your little sibling isn't a kid anymore. And at some point, it happens to everyone, where like your kid sibling is an adult. And this is where Wynonna realizes it, where there's all this like up and down that they've had throughout the season, where they know each other, they don't know each other, there's missteps and everything. And there's a moment now where they don't choose to say anything. There's nothing that can be said, and Wynonna implicitly entrusts Waverly. Whew, I did it under 4 minutes. It's done. This has been fantastic. I look forward to season 2.
Hey, Jill here, Natalie's office. For the finale, I want to focus on one scene. And not just because it took place out of, or just outside of Natalie's office, but because I think it's a really pivotal scene. And part of it is hysterical. And this is what I'm talking about when they come out of Natalie's office and Nicole walks into the bullpen and Willa threatens to punch a bunch of holes in Waverly's girlfriend, and Wynonna goes, girlfriend? And Waverly goes, kinda? And Nicole goes, kinda? And that, I mean, there's literally 4 words, and so much is told. So much story, so much emotion is expressed in those 4 words. And I love it. It cracks me up every time. It makes me feel every time. And I just love just that repartee right there. But also, after Willa tries to punch a hole in Waverly's girlfriend, that, well, first of all, that commercial break really was very long. But also, when we came back from that commercial break, Wynonna, was like, oh my God, this chick better not be a revenant. Like, holy bleep. Like, seriously. After all of this, she better not be a revenant. And, of course, Waverly is super teary-eyed and freaking out. And if we all can transport ourselves back to the point of what the media environment was like at the time, there were a lot of people freaking out. A lot of people. But then, Nicole was wearing a bulletproof vest, and if anybody has gone through the experience of having to reveal themselves to a loved one who you thought truly would accept you, but you weren't sure, and you'd been keeping it a secret, and now it was out there. And honestly, these sisters, this moment where the older sister of Wynonna accepted her younger sister literally, with a shrug and a wink. And was like, yeah, girl, whatever, there's a zombie apocalypse. Kissy kissy, we gotta get moving now. That was special. That was special. And I loved that Earper sister moment for that reason. And I love this episode for so many other reasons. But for me, that scene, both for the hilarity and for that really quintessential Earp sister moment, that was really special. Yeah. See you in season 2.